Well, finally, we're here with my brother, master teacher, Moorish scientist, Dr. ALIM Bey. Doc, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself to the people? I'm sure you know you're well known as you know, you've been doing the work you do for quite some time now. But in the event that there are some people out here who have never heard of you, who've never seen any of your works or any of your lectures or presentations, please just give them a little backdrop, a little rundown on who Dr. ALIM Bey is.
All right, I'm Dr. ALIM Bey. I've been doing this now for about 25 years. As far as metaphysics, law, occult teachings, esoteric sciences, ontology, astrology, numerology, alternative healing, herbalism, iridology, pranic healing, qigong, tai chi, reiki, doing it all, you know, over the last 25 years and more. I have a Doctor of Divinity degree. I also have a doctorate of metaphysics. So basically that's me in short terms.
Now, a lot of people probably are familiar with you from that the debate you did with Sarah Sutton Seti back in the I guess that was in the 90s or
2009. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was a, you know, that I think that dealt with a little bit of some of the historical information. I don't want to get too much sidetracked on that. I just want to reference that may be where some people are familiar with you from, but you have been doing a lot more than debates and, you know, arguing with people whether they agree with, you know, the information that you present or not.
Right. Well, actually, how that debate came about was that me and Brother Sarah Sutton Seti actually debated various subjects dealing with the Moorish history and information 3 times prior to that debate on radio shows. Since I guess it appeared I was the only one that wasn't afraid in order to go against him at the time. Yeah, I didn't have the voice like he did, you know, with the rah-rah, you know, and the sensationalism or the emotionalism. But the thing is that I was sincere about the information and getting the information out to the people. So that's basically what my goal was simply get the information out to the people. We know we're going to have a room full of people. It was the first major debate ever, you know, in that, I guess, of that magnitude in the New York area, you know, during that time period, at least for the modern age. You know, we had prior debates, but normally those debates were between, you know, like, hold on a second, let me close this out. All right. Normally, as I was saying, normally what happens is that there was prior debates before that, like Anthony Hiller against Dr. Khalid Muhammad, you know, and Dr. Khalid Muhammad, you know, got at him, you know, so, you know, and Anthony Hiller is a European. So there was debates like that against, you know, our people against their best scholars or lecturers or whatever you want to refer to them as. You know, you had Dr. Francis Quest Welsing, who went up against, I think his name is Dr. William Shockley, you know, and that was a slaughter. You know, she slaughtered him with the information coming from her ISIS papers. So, you know, it just shows that over and over again, that type of thing.
Well, there's been a lot of different debates, obviously, a lot of different schools of thoughts that
right
present different aspects or perspective of the information. And I want to kind of start off, like, you know, with one place in particular, reference point, 1492. We always hear about 1492, and our people seem to be stuck on it in the sense that when we think of 1492, we always think about Columbus sailing the ocean blue and all this nonsense about him discovering,
Yeah.
America and all this stuff. But what happened? What was some of the other things that was going on in 1492? Like particularly with the I believe that was the year when the last Moorish king was defeated in Spain. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, and the last stronghold of the Moors was Granada, Spain, in which that they essentially he just gave up. We didn't even go into war. We just simply gave up because we know that we had other import and export businesses and different things in which that we could have done. And so basically, we just gave up the last stronghold, which was Granada, Spain, and some went back into Africa based on um, Stanley Poole's work, the Moors of Spain, as well as also the Moors after Spain. You will read within those two texts by Stanley Poole, he speaks of how some Moors returned into other parts of Africa, into Europe, as well as also um, we find out that according to Ivan van Sertima in his book, The Golden Age of the Moors, that some even came here to the Americas because they was already doing import and export worldwide. They was the navigators, as we would say, of the seven seas. Even though there's 32 seas or so, but they normally say seven seas, talking about the seven major oceans. So we see them traveling throughout the world and doing import and export. And individual by the name of Christopher Columbus or Cristobal Colon, in which that some even are speculating if he even exists, that it was a pseudonym in which that was utilized by the Portuguese and the Spaniards in order to go and spread their terrorism across the globe, in particular within the North Americas, Central Americas, South Americas, and their adjoining islands.
Okay. So prior to 1492, there are different accounts of how long the Moors were there for. Some say 700 years, some say 800. I've heard up to 900 years. What is the accurate timeline?
Well, they normally start counting around 711 AD. That's where you get the 7-Eleven grocery stores from, 7-Eleven. So they normally start at around 711 AD into 1492. So that would give us approximately 800 years. But there was Moors that was already in Europe prior to those time periods. You had St. Patrick running the snakes out of Ireland. Those snakes were who was known as the pygmies or the Twa people, as we refer to them as, the little small brown people who come from out of the interior of Africa, near Uganda and Rwanda area.
Okay. So the Irish, I heard somewhere that they were like amalgamated people, all people as well, the Irish.
Right.
And
This is why those from so-called Britain, I don't call it Great Britain, but from Britain, they refer to those from in Ireland as the Green Niggers because of their mixture with those small brown men and women known as the Twa people prior to St. Patrick running them out of Ireland. So there was a lot of mixing going on at that time period in those areas. And see, if you get the book Ancient and Moderate Britons by David McRitchie, volume 1 and 2, he goes extensively into that information.
okay. All right. Now, when we deal with the term Moors, there's so much debate now going on. I see people even actively trying to, argue against it as if it's something negative that we're trying to claim. What is your understanding of the term? Or where does it come from? Is it a term that the Greeks or the Romans call us, or were we calling ourselves more before? And what does it mean?
Okay, all right. We have various stills in which that can be found from out of Egypt and out of Ethiopia. The term dates back to Ethiopia. Even the written language of the Metu was called um, Moritic, Merotic, Moritic, or excuse me, Meroitic. So that is from the capital, the old capital of Ethiopia called Meroe, which is Meroe. All right. That becomes Meru because the O and the U was interchangeable as far as vowels were concerned. If you go to the definition of America, it says the original application of the name of America was Meru, Meru. And this is why they always compare the so-called Indians to being Ethiopians. And they said that the Indians didn't look no different than the Ethiopians. If you get Africans and Native Americans by Jack D. Forbes. In that book, he specifically states that the Indians look no different than the Ethiopians. So they was considered Ethiopians also, the so-called Indians, because that's how we look. We look just like we do right now as me and you sit here. And for those who might be, listening and watching this, interview take place on Google Hangout. So they look no different than us at that time. We are the same people. As a matter of fact, you know that the Olmecs, who was called the She people, or Amaru, She, or She Amaru, that's where the name America comes from. And it stemmed from Meru, Meru, which was the capital at one time. You get the book, Wonderful Kushite of the ancient Ethiopian Empire. I think that's the name of it by what's the sister name? Um, Sister Houston, Dr. Houston. She wrote that book, and in that book, she speaks about how the capital was called Meru or Monroe prior to even the Greeks utilizing that term. So to the Greeks, anyone who came out of Ethiopia, because the word Ethiopia itself meant bird face, and they replied to the people who came out of Ethiopia, went up into Egypt as Egyptos, which also means burnt face. And as they came into what is known as Greece, which actually was originally ran by the Cretans and the Minoans. The Minoans actually was the followers of Men, who was Amen from out of ancient Egypt. Then as the Europeans came out the Caucasus Mountains 2,000 years, well, it was about 2,000 years ago now. And as they, well, I a little bit over more than 2,000 years, but as they came from out of the Caucasus Mountains, they came into the interior of Greece. That is where the color started to change and people started to amalgamate, became more mulatto. A lot of the information concerning our heritage was cast into the Mediterranean Sea. A lot of our statues and information that was once there in what is called Greece. Actually, it was referred to as Minoan originally. Prior to that, or Crete, or the Cretan lands. So, that's what we're looking at is the actual origin coming from out of Ethiopia into Kemet or Egypt or Temere or Temere or Temeri as they refer to it as. And matter of fact, the word Temeri is the word Temeru, Temeru. As you have Semeru or Semeri or Samaria. As you have America, Amaru. So the Meru part, it stems from out of Africa into Mesopotamia into the America, the whole of America. So we always use the Meru name and the word Meru means beloved, coming from Mary, which was the ancient Egyptian or Kemetic deity of the Queen of Heaven or Set. That was another name for her. As we was the beloved people, it also means that we are the sun people, you know, because it dealt with, like I said, the so-called burnt faces. In other words, those who were brown and dark skin complected.
So it has a long history that you can stretch around the etymological field several times.
Right.
And it goes, you're saying basically beyond the Greeks, because if you're dealing with the term being used in America, it's and using the term in America beyond the Greeks, the Romans, all those different people who a lot of times the word is associated with.
Right. Even when we look at the word America, the original Americans, according to even Noah Webster Dictionary 1828, all the way up until 1936 and 1937 says specifically, which is called Webster Universal Dictionary, specifically states that they are Aboriginal copper-colored natives, all right, who was here prior, right, copper-colored natives who was here prior to the invasion of the territory by the Europeans. And the original application of the name was Meru, M-E-R-U. So the natives' name was Meru. That was our name. So the word more is nothing, take the vowels out, it's M-R. You have the same consonants, M-R. If you take the vowels out, you know, we know that the vowels simply cause a soul urge change within the word. But the vowels, but the consonants remains the same. The word consonant stems from the word constant. And if you look at Webster Dictionary, constant means that which remains the same. So there's no change in frequency as far as the consonants are concerned. And they have the same consonant, M-R and M-R. And on the walls of ancient Kemet, that was an owl and the mouth of Ra, which is called Ru, R-U. So M was the glyph of an owl, and RU was the mouth of Ra. So you have MRU, like MR. Once again, and MRU becomes Maru, you know? So, which basically means, once again, in its cognitive meaning, that we are the children of Ra. We are the sun people.
So how do you reconcile the differences of opinion when people say that's a mistranslation or misinterpretation of what those glyphs actually meant? Because I think I've seen some brothers use the E Wallace Budge symbols you're talking about in the book of the dead, that he, as he called it.
Well, guess what? If you go to the book of Ptah Hotep, the oldest book in the world, which was written, translated by Asa G. Hilliard, Dr. Asa G. Hilliard, he shows the actual glyph right there in the book. And he translated to mean guardians, the guardians. So I don't have a problem with being a guardian, because based on Stolen Legacy by George G. James, he states on page, I think it's around between page 32 to 39, in between those 7 pages, he states specifically that the custodians of the ancient mystery school of Egypt were the Moors. Hence, the custodians or the guardians of those mysteries.
Okay, that's beautiful. All right. You just mentioned Georgie, but I didn't want to just segue to that, but I have an interesting question about it, because I heard you speak once in a video where you said that he was killed in a way, in a manner that kind of reflected some kind of Masonic ritual.
Right.
Is that true, or is that just?
No, that's true.
Okay.
He had his throat slashed from ear to ear and his tongue pulled out.
George James, who wrote Stolen Legacy, this happened to?
Yes.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yes.
Wow.
And actually, they was upset because he wrote that book revealing that the Moors were the ancient custodians of the ancient mystery school, meaning that the Europeans weren't.
Okay, so y'all make sure y'all go check that out, because you know that's one of the books that definitely opened my eyes to a lot of the information at the time when I was just uh, breaking into some of this stuff. Stolen legacy, I didn't know that, and I said I had to ask you that because like some attempts to research it, I came up with different people where even the death certificate showed that he died from some kind of cancer of the stomach, I believe.
Right.
I wasn't sure if that was the same George James. So, because I heard you speak about it, I wanted to get the clarity on that. So that's really, really interesting. A lot of people come forth with information, and we see this information is very dangerous. How do you you deal with the reality of that, knowing that you are also standing and others like you are standing in the same shoes as some of these people who come before you and presented information that ultimately cost them their lives?
Well, the thing is that as I always tell people, this isn't for punks. They think it's just glorious getting in front of people and being able to disseminate information. Sometimes, this isn't acceptable. The information which that you put your life on the line for. And most of the time it's not grateful. You don't get gratitude for doing so.
Is it worth it?
Hmm?
Do you believe it's worth it? All the time? Do you feel like it's worth it? Like the
It's worth
fact that
it.
you don't feel gratitude.
It's worth it from the individual and just enlightening each one, teach one. So if I can enlighten just one person, I feel that I did my job. They can take it and carry it on and continue getting the information out, public or private.
Beautiful. All right, now let's get into some of the history as far as it's a lot. There's been so much misinformation, and some of it is stuff that we also present, stuff that we present that we don't have full data or facts on. But a lot of it is based on the history and just the conditioning that we've gone through as a people over many years under the current world order that we're living under. They've presented so many different things, and now you kind of look back and you kind of see why they didn't want you to read or know how to do certain literary things, because if you know how to read, I mean, a lot of the lies they were telling you wouldn't hold up. So
right,
one of the big things is slavery.
Mm-hmm.
But we have the narrative that the Americas, North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean islands were basically, some curtain was pulled across the whole world where nobody else knew where this place was for hundreds of thousands or all the time that we've been on this planet. Nobody knew that anybody was here.
Right, millions of years. Right, exactly.
And Christopher Columbus,
right,
in 1492, after the last stronghold of the Moors, was basically surrendered or abdicated.
Right, really, he was a spy.
Yeah.
He followed the Moors over here because, like I said, this was one of the strongholds that we had. That's why we just gave up Spain so easily.
Yeah.
That's why we gave it up because this was also a stronghold here. So we already set up camp here. So he came and followed us. Actually, I think it was around March of 1492. That the Moors left Granada and scattered about, and some came here. By September, I guess there was other Moors, because there was always infighting, no different than what's going on now. There was infighting amongst the Moors, and so they end up telling King Fernandez and Queen Isabella about the Moors who came over here. So by September, going into October, Christopher Columbus or Cristobal Colon, whatever term that you want to refer to him as, ends up setting sail to come and follow us over here. Not looking for no damn spices in India, but yet ends up crashing into the West Indies, or as we know as the Caribbeans or Caribbean, and You know, in particular of what he referred to as Isabella, which we refer to as Cuba to this day. And the reason why it was called Cuba is because of the Kaaba, on which that there was Muslims on that land. And matter of fact, according to the diary notes of Cristobal Colon and also of his son, they speak specifically of when they arrived that they seen a mosque on top of the hill and was greeted at the shores by an emperor who spoke Arabic, Hebrew, and Chaldean. That's Arabic, Hebrew, and Chaldean. Now, those were what we refer to as Eastern languages, but yet they were spoken here in the West on the island of Cuba. Okay.
Okay. Wow. So a lot of stuff happened basically when we look at the history.
Right.
A lot of stuff and a lot of different ways to interpret it. It's funny how they interpreted it to make it seem like nobody else knew about this place.
Right.
And Columbus, looking for spices, and it's such a neat
what they told us, because they knew that it would be a while before we read those diaries. But in those diaries, Christopher Columbus or Cristobal Colon and his son both states that they met, of course, so-called blacks that was already here. Matter of fact, they say they look African to them. So that is no different than what they refer to us as now, as being African American. But they had us believe that they just brought us over here 400 years ago. That the first 20 blacks came 1619. But they'll never speak of the 200 whites or Irish who came almost 9 months prior to that. They don't speak about Abu Bakari, who came almost nearly 200 years on 2,200 ships and brought his people over here from out of what was called the Ghanaian Mali Empire or the Malian Empire, which if you ever seen the Malian Empire, that spread it all the way from Niger, Nigeria, Mauritania, parts of Morocco into Ghana, Senegal, Benin. And so he brought people from those areas here 200 years before, almost 200 years before Cristobal Colon. We're looking at a reconstruction of history. And he came on 2,200 ships. All right. Matter of fact, it was the year 1311. And he sailed out 200 ships, only one returned out of the 200. And the one that returned said that, that those other ships continue going forward into the current. And then the following year, by 1312, 13 going to 1313, he set sail with more than 1,000. They said almost up to 2,000 ships. So if people want to say how we got here 400 years ago, well, goddamn it wasn't by Christopher Columbus. It wasn't by Cristobal Colon. It was by Abu Bakari. All right. So if they want to say that we are just Africans, that's how they got here. That's the Europeans didn't bring us here, in masses. But Abu Bakari came with 2,000 ships prior to that. 200 years prior to that.
Let's talk about the European versions of what they said happened. The slave ships. How many slave ships would have been necessary to basically bring, and how much people would be on each ship to cross the ocean over 3 months?
Right.
Or however long it took. To populate the populations you have in South America, North America, Central America, the Caribbean islands, and how many ships? They said 35,000 voyages. According to your research, what have you come back with? Are those numbers correct or no?
Well, based on the information that we received from Emory University down in Atlanta, Georgia, they stated that over a 309-year period from 1619 to 1865, is that allegedly they had about 35,000 voyages. But we know that one ship, it will only take about 3 to 4 months. So that means that one ship can only sail approximately 3 times the year, out the year. All right. So they would have to have calculated how much food. Because see, Abu Bakari and the ship that he took over there, which was 2,200 ships, they weren't making plans on coming back to Africa. All right. They had plans on staying here. So, so this ain't, we ain't talking about, you know, going back and forth as they was claiming with these 35,000 trips. The problem that we have is that I've gone to all the major museums in the world. All right, my wife and I've gone to my wife gone to the Louvre in Paris. We've gone to the British Museum. We've gone to the New York Natural Science and History Museum. We've gone to the Smithsonian. Even going to the New African Museum, in which that is in Washington, D.C. And going throughout and going to Italy to those museums, going to throughout the country to various museums, and we have yet to find a slave ship. They keep showing the exact same drawing over and over again. And I have a problem with that because slavery only ended 150 years ago. But yet you just found a ship that dates back 3,500 years ago in Egypt. You know, so that is a problem that we're having. If the Europeans say that they brought us here, I know them and their mentality. Their mentality would be, here we refurbish this ship for you, and here go the chains. You can put your hands and arms into them. Let's see if they fit.
So, question: are you saying then that there was no ships that carried black people from Africa as slaves to the Americas or the Caribbean, or are you saying that the drawings of the ships that they're showing you are not actual ships? They're just drawings. What are you saying?
Right. What I'm saying is that they did not bring the vast majority of us here. Abu Bakari brought us here. Then you had prior to him, because he came to be with his brothers in Mexico, who were the Olmecs, who were the Nubian Egyptians. The Nubian Egyptians were already here thousands of years prior to that. Matter of fact, the Olmecs are said to have been here nearly 5,000 years ago. All right. More than 2,000 years before Christ. All right. So we're looking at, I think they said the calendar goes back to 3,113 BC or 3,111, depending on the books in which that you read. That would be more than 3,000 years before Christ. So we're looking at more than a 5,000 year period that the Nubian Egyptians were already here prior to Abu Bakari coming here. All right. Then you have information coming from the fossils. And the fossils were here over 25,000 to 75,000 years ago, based on estimates coming from National Geographic. Prior to that, you have the Washita, who state that they was here over 100,000 years ago. Then, based on another book called Forbidden Archaeology by Michael Creedmoor and Richard L. Thompson, they go back and state that we were here over 600 million years ago. 600
million, you said?
600 million.
Wow.
There was a blast that was done in Dorchester, Massachusetts, in which that a vase, a bell-shaped vase was blown out of the wreckage, out of the explosion, in which they had exquisite carving all around it. So whoever it was 600 million years ago, they were smelting metal. Okay, so this is why I can't believe what the Europeans said, because you're talking about a group of people who just got here less than 6,000 years ago. And we got history that goes back, which the Smithsonian has been hiding for the last 100 some odd years. So we're talking about various impacts.
So you're saying
over hundreds and thousands and millions of years ago, in which that they're not telling us about, of Africans coming here. So these oldest Africans would be the first Americans, of course, i.e. us. So our heritage dates back not just to Africa, but also from out of Australia, because guess what? There was a Southern Pacific impact that also took place. So we're talking about Africans who left from out of the interior of Africa, spread it across into Mesopotamia, into China, into Australia.
I mean, with that kind of information right there, right? With that kind of information right there, it's like basically what I'm hearing is that we were here when the dinosaurs were here.
Exactly.
Based on that information, the whole theory of evolution is now like in limbo, because they said that man came about around 200 something thousand years, right?
Well, you know, that's a lie.
That's just based on how the fabricated
right,
doctrines they propagate. But
right, but they talk about this blood type. Oldest blood type is O blood type, and they dated back to about 300,000 years ago. So that's the oldest blood type. But that has nothing to do with us being the oldest people.
Hey, Squid, how you doing? All right, go ahead, brother. I'm hearing you.
Yeah, I was saying that has nothing to do with us being the oldest people on the planet. In which that, even according to Elijah Muhammad, he stated that we have no set birth record, and that's why I'm basically showing that the Albions, even nowadays in moderate archaeology and anthropology, have to tell the truth about us being on this planet much longer than 300,000 years ago, because they even tell you that there are fossils in which that they're found, such as Lucy, which dates back to 2.8 to 3.2 million years ago, even though I know that to be a monkey species. You know,
I got a question now.
Hominoid, you know, but this is what they say.
Hey, I just came back from Jamaica a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always hear about, from I was a little boy growing up, I heard about the Arawak Indians, the Carib Indians, all these different Indians, when we know that this is not India, right? And based on just that spell, because when you hear the word Indian, nobody sees curly or woolly hair or texture here like mine or yours. They just see the straight hair, you know, cowboy, and you know those Western movies they used to play, they used to show on TV.
Right, the Mongolians.
The Mongolians, right?
Mongol.
And so that's what they consider to be Indians. But talk to me about the history, because like this is some of the things I wanted to get into. Talk to me about some of the history of us being not only in the Americas but in the Caribbean. Like, go into that if you have some information on that. Right.
Well, the Arawak were originally the Cherokee, or what is known as the Chickacoy, also referred to as the Selegi, also referred to as the Eninuia people, which means Eninuia actually means we the people, or we are the people. So that's oftentimes what the vast majority of tribes refer to themselves as we the people. This is why the Constitution starts out with the preamble, we the people. It's because we know that information, according to Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin, i.e., who was actually Benjamin Banneker, we find out that they got the information and they sat amongst the Iroquois Confederation. All right, and that's where the Constitution comes from. So we're looking at the Cherokee, as they left from out of what we now refer to as North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia area, and went down into the Caribbeans. All right, so you look at that impact, and then we also look at the impact that you had Abu Bakari and his crew, as well as there was many concessions or passages that Africans took as they came through, and they will also go into those various islands also, and some would stay. So we're looking at, once again, impact over and over again of African upon African who are now called American. You know, so those various impacts over time produced who was known as the Arawak, later on the Taino, along with the Spanish invasion. You know, and that's what we do know. You know, the Maroons were those who could not be restricted, and they went up into in Jamaica. They went up into the mountainous area in order to escape prosecution and escape oppression from the Albion, the European, in particular of the Britons, from trying to capture them and take them into slavery. You know, so the Maroons is also we get the word Meru from the Maroon, the Maroon. So once again, it's the one and the same people.
Were the Maroons only in the Caribbeans, or were they also, was there groups of them in other places?
Oh yes, there was groups of them. Matter of fact, you find the Maroons in Florida, who they become known as the Seminole, and the Seminoles are also the Yamasee, also the Gullah Geechee people from out of South Carolina near Beaufort. So they are all one and the same people.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. I mean, because you know, in Jamaica, there's you're right, they're up in the mountains. It's called Maroon Town.
Right.
And I'm sure you've heard of Nanny.
Yes, Queen Annie.
Yeah, Queen Nanny, exactly.
Right.
She's actually buried in Morristown.
Right.
You know, that's a telltale for you right there. So basically, just you know, not swaying away from the whole slavery conversation. You're saying that slavery didn't happen the way we were taught.
Right. It
What
was much more. It was much more. It was much more. It was much more extensive than what they've told us. They have us believe that they just brought us all from Africa, but yet they don't tell us that no, they was actually doing. There's an account in Africans and Native Americans by Jack D. Forbes of over 3,000 Native Americans, i.e., Moors or blacks, Africans being taken from here, from in the Americas to Europe, all right, as well as to Africa. They don't speak about that impact. There are also impacts of taking us, getting us from out of Central, the islands, and also South America, and bringing us up into North America. Taking those from North America, bringing them down into the breaking grounds, which was the islands or the Caribbeans, and taking them into Central and South America. So we have a twisting of a lot of the facts that they never told us about, of the various impacts over and over again in the various territories. So you might have relatives that was actually once in North America, they're now in the islands, but also those same relatives or ancestors stem all the way back to those who were now in Central America and South America. So once again, you have us all throughout the whole Americas.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of arguments about cultural appropriation, you know,
Right.
from our side and then from the sides of people saying that we're trying to, you know, culturally appropriate as the Native Americans' heritage.
Well, no, we're not saying, we only using the term Native American because of lack of terminology. Let's say indigenous Americans.
Okay.
Because based on the term indigenous, we are the oldest people on the face of the planet. Therefore, we are the most indigenous people on the planet, period. Based on the United Nations definition of indigenous people is this: those who have historical continuity here prior to the invasion of their territories by the Europeans. 2, as well as those who was brought to the New World who freed themselves and wish to be reattached to the culture they've been torn. Now, that includes those who was already here prior to the European invasion, as well as those who allegedly were brought here, you know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't as many as they say. Even based on Wikipedia, they say only about 450 to 500,000 people were brought here to North America from out of Africa. Now, we already have millions of people that was already here prior to that. So that means that those thousands mixed in with those millions. And there's no way, because at that time, we had about approximately 90 million. All right, and they got our numbers down through William Hertz. All right. And what's the other guy's name? William Hertz. He did an ethnic cleansing. We'll put smallpox. General William Hertz. He put smallpox on blankets and spreading those throughout the various tribes. And so they decimated us from 90 million to 25 million. Decimated us.
Question about that. Because I've probed that thought and asked the questions on that. Those numbers from 90 million to 25 million, that's roughly 65 million people, right? Am my numbers off, or am I about right? 65 70 million people there? Okay. What time period did that happen in? And where are the mass graves for all these people? Where you know?
That happened between the 1600s to the 1800s.
So who was the same person who was spreading the blankets? Was
in particular the smallpox blankets? That was
that go on for?
That was the late 1700s to the early 1800s when they were spreading those small pockets blankets. And Pontiac, Chief Pontiac was the first one to receive those blankets, and it started from his tribe, this ethnic cleansing.
Okay. So has anybody discovered any mass graves where, you know, large numbers of bones have been recovered, or
yeah, actually downtown Manhattan, New York. It was called the Seneca people, and actually we was from downtown Manhattan, New York, all the way into Central Park. They found mass graves.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's by the Justice Building.
Right, exactly.
I heard about that. But matter of fact, I read or I believe I saw somewhere where it was stated that Central Park was what you're calling Seneca Village, right?
Right, that's Seneca Village. Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And at that time, they happened to look just like us. Because how we know that? Because they also refer to it as the slave village. Now, hold up. If they Seneca people, how is it the slave village at the same time? Because what they're trying to say is that, oh, well, you know, there was a lot of runaways and the Indians, you know, they housed them, and, you know, there was a lot of mixing in. No, how about they was already dark-skinned native people? This is why you have brothers like Old Dirty Bastard, ODB, say that my great-grandfather sold the Manhattan to the Indian, Manhattan to the Europeans. You know, if you get his information, you find out that it actually was his great-great-great-great-grandfather, you know, who, when the Europeans came to Manhattan, this is where you get the story that allegedly they sold the island of Manhattan for 24 beads.
24 beads.
24 beads. Now, we know that is BS, you know, but this is what is alleged, because you have gold, you have silver, you have precious minerals and stones and rocks and gems, and you want to sell the whole island for 24 beads? Interesting.
It's so interesting when you kind of look at the parallels of those claims that they make, because the same way they talk about Manhattan, you have to look at Louisiana. Louisiana, I believe, was once Washita territory.
Right.
And the land, the whole thing was stolen and then sold.
Right, in 1803.
So, you know, Nobody was selling anything for no trinkets.
No.
You know.
Matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson stated his sentiments at the time that that the land there was fraudulent, because the only thing that Thomas Jefferson actually was trying to acquire and purchase was 2 barracks and no, 2 streets and some barracks, military barracks.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the whole of Louisiana, and it definitely wasn't a whole of Louisiana so-called purchase, which goes into more than 13 states, into almost the whole of Canada.
Okay. So what are some of the sources that you can levy for people who want to do the research or have questions?
Right. People need to
the claim
read
about slavery as how you're talking about it, because some people feel it's disrespectful to say that, you know, our ancestors didn't go through what we are.
I'm not saying that they didn't go through slavery. Slavery existed.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying that that occurred after the conquering of our people that was already here, and them switching us from place to place. This is why you see the movie Roots. That was accurate about the fact. Now the movie Roots on whole was a disgrace, but when they was talking about that they would split off families and have families or members of the families go to this place and to that place, that was true.
Roots. You're talking about Alex Haley and plagiarism?
Right. Well, we talking about the plagiarism part, but we know about the plagiarism part, but we talking about
the actual context of what it was.
Right. The context of him showing of the families being broken up, that took place. That's real.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That is historical. That's a fact. All right.
But that's what I was saying though. It's not to cut your wisdom, but
mm-hmm.
What I was saying though, as far as like how the narrative of slavery showed about 300 to 400 people stuck on ships, and the way they're laid out with no bathrooms and no, you know what I mean, no accommodations really, and people are going to lay there for 3 months, stiff back, stiff everything, and then come off the boat and go right into the, you know, that's ridiculous. Like I think that part of it is where like some more in-depth research and more thinking needs to go into to see what
into their fantastic tale.
Yeah.
Because for you got 200 to 500 people on a ship, POWs, i.e. so-called slaves. I don't even like using the word slave because that comes from the European word Slav, as in Yugoslavic. And we're not Yugoslavic or from Slovenian. So we shouldn't even be using that term, slave or Slav. But we know that we were POWs, prisoners of war. And we are in a war state right now because they're occupying our land without any compensation. Where's our rent? Where's our lease money and funds? We shouldn't have to pay taxes. We shouldn't have to do any of these things because you are on our land. It's the United States Corporation of America. America is not of the United States, nor is it a corporation. We are the indigenous people of this landmass. This is why they had to trick us at the hospital and transform us into corporations, making us civilists more too, dead in the eyes of the Lord, giving us these false labels, Negro, blacks, and colors, and etc. So we understand that this whole thing is to treat us as chattel property, but yet we are the indigenous people, you know? And the word chattel is a French word for cattle. So right now we are in an animalistic state, and we are rising up out of this animalistic state, and no longer want to be property because property can't own property. And that's where we're at right now, is that we are property being owned as property. And many of us don't want to break out of that. So we rather utilize titles such as Negro, blacks, and colors, that's fine if that's what they want to utilize. However, when I look back at Dr. John Henry Clark, and he said, instantaneously, your culture, your heritage, your history must instantaneously tie you back to land. We are people in search of a nationality. As a people in search of a nationality, our nationality must instantaneously tie us back to land. So when I look in the Black's Law Dictionary and I look at the word land, Now see the word Moors, Moors, embedded inside the definition. God damn, how much more do you instantaneously get tied back to land? If not take on the title of land, because Moors and land are synonymous.
That's deep. That is deep. So not to jump too far ahead, but I want you to give the sources for some of the that's some people could use to research or review some of this information, like just books that you could recommend that people can look into and
Since we're speaking about John Henry Clark, I will make mention of his book, Africans and African Holocaust and Columbus. That particular book coming from him, the Ma'afa, by Sister Annie. Let me see. What They Never Told You in History Class by Indo-Kemet Kush. Also, Missing Pages of History by Indo-Kemet Kush. African Presence in the Americas by Dr. Ivan von Sertima. We Came Before Columbus by Dr. Ivan von Sertima. Like we said earlier, The Golden Age of the Moors by Ivan von Sertima. Destruction of Black Civilization by Dr. Chancellor Williams. Ancient Future by Professor Wayne Chandler. Egyptian Yoga, Volume 1 and 2 by Dr. Muata Ashby. So these are just some of the books that I make mention of.
Okay, that people can use to research. Now, as far as the Moors, the present population or body of Moors that people that call themselves Moors in the United States or in America.
Mm-hmm.
What is the genesis of that? Is that a continuation of the old Moorish Empire, or is it something that starts with the Moorish science stuff of America, particularly with Noble Drew Ali?
No, even Moorish Noble Drew Ali, even Prophet Noble Drew Ali, he states within chapter 47 of the Moorish Holy Quran, Circle 7, that we went to the ancient Egyptians, and matter of fact, that chapter was called Ancient Egypt, the dominion of the ancient dominion. So the dominion of where it says that that dominion stretched all the way from out of Africa all the way into Mexico, which is the Americas. So this is a continuation of the Kushite Empire, because it says old man Kush. So the Kushites becomes the Dogon, the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians become the Dogon. The Dogon becomes the Olmecs, who are the Mandis or Mandinka people, or the Mandingo. All right? They are here within the Americas over 5,000 years ago. They left out of Egypt. The Dogon left out of Egypt 8,000 years ago. All right? So a portion of them went into Mali. All right? And even the word Mali and Meru are one and the same. M-A-L-I, and the R and the L's are interchangeable in the ancient Egyptian or Kemetic language. You know that the Dogon was the ancient Egyptian priests of astrology. They were the astronomers. This is why they did so much with the star constellation, Sirius in particular, and why they still have the Ziggy ceremonies. Is because they show how Sirius A and Sirius B conjunct and intertwine just like your DNA. And they say that we come from the star constellation Sirius. Hold on. All right. So they say that we come from the star constellation Sirius. Mm-hmm. So the Dogons are the Mandi people, or the Mandinka people. You have each branch of the Dinka people, who are the ancient Egyptians, who are called the Nubians now. And you have a west branch of the Dinka people, who are called the Mandinka people, who are also the Dogon people. And they left from out of West Africa and came into what we now call South America, into the interior of Mexico or the Yucatan Peninsula. All right, which is now called the Mexican Gulf, or the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, where you find the Olmec statues, over 22 statues you found of these king heads, you know, weighing tons upon tons. You know what I'm saying? Weighing more than 5 tons.
What you say to the people, especially of the, you know, I guess Mexican heritage, right?
Right.
Who have written books and shown pictures of people, Mexicans who look like the Olmec heads, and say these are who the Olmecs were, not African, Nubian, or the you know, that kind of look similar to them.
Right. Well, that's because they never traveled and actually met archaeologists and anthropologists. My wife and I have gone to Mexico several times, and we've gone to Chichen Itza, Cobol, Tulum, which are the various Mexican Olmec sites. And we have talked to the professors and to the tour guides, and they all have said the same thing. They said something happened about 4 years ago. This was the last time we went, was 2012. Before that, we went 2007 to Mexico. All right. In 2012, I got the documentation and I got the footage. There was a Mayan archaeologist. He was a tour guide, and he said specifically that the Olmecs are the mothers and fathers of Western civilization. And he also says that they were Nubian Egyptians. This is what he says. So
Egyptians.
all those people saying that what here go the Mexicans looking like the Olmecs had, of course, you are our descendants. But you did not originally have those characteristics because you're not the oldest people on the face of the planet. The oldest people on the face of the planet are those who have the darker skin hue. Case closed. That is based on archaeology. That is based on anthropological history. That is based on historical references and teachings. That is based on biblical teachings. I can't go no further, because the first country that is even mentioned in the Bible is Ethiopia or Kush. That's in damn Genesis, the 5th chapter, or the 3rd chapter. So we can't even go any further back. So let's just take it at that reference. Every reference is talking about us being the oldest people on the face of the planet, the most indigenous, period. And that's worldwide. We are a global people. Every place that the European have gone, he found relics of us, whether it's Australia, South America, Central America, the adjoining islands, or what you call the Caribbeans, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia. We've been there.
You know,
years ago.
I interviewed Seer, the Duke of Tears. You familiar with him?
Of course.
Seer is brilliant, right? And he was saying how when we were in Europe, particularly in Spain, for that duration of time that we were there, if it's 700 or 900 or 1,000 years, that's a long time. We've been in, according to the timeline that they've given for us here in America, right? It's only been, this country is about almost 300 something years old, right? About 300 years old.
Right. About 250 to 300. Yep.
Yeah.
That's about right. Mm-hmm.
If we started coming here, let's just go with the narrative that, 1492 or 1619, because,
right.
1492 to 1619 is over 100 years, 100 plus years that everybody's talking about. We know Elijah Muhammad said it was really 1555.
Right, based on individual, a seller by the name of John Hawkins.
Yeah,
John Hawkins, right.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, we was in Spain or Europe for over 700 years.
Right.
We're living under their rulership now for less than 400, 500 years, right? And look at how we basically identify ourselves, the way we dress, everything. So it's kind of like just mirror. If you want to see an example of what it was like when we were in the position, we're seeing it now when we're on the other side of it.
Right.
We act like them, we talk like them, we celebrate their, we win victories for them. We go to the Olympics, we go go to war, do all these different things. It was the same way.
Right.
It had to be the same exact way. So those people that were like, if America was to dissolve it as a nation or a corporation, whatever you know, where you want to look at it, right? The people that are here would still carry on with the American spirit. Even if they started, you know, even if they say, you know, you say you want to start your own thing, you do it from the time that you've been on the American system. You basically have that mindset to carry on to launch your own thing, even if you do it a little bit different.
Right.
So the Spanish Empire came up after the Moorish Empire fell, and here in Mexico and a lot of the other places where you have people that call themselves Spanish now, that's a direct result of the influence of, you know, the Spanish coming in, because Mexicans are labeled under Spanish.
Right.
Pretty much all the people in South America and Central America who speak, you know, that tongue, they're referred to as Spanish. But
let me tell you, in Guerrero, Mexico, there's hundreds and thousands, millions of blacks in Mexico.
Indeed.
They don't ever show you them. So these are the descendants of the Olmecs. They are still there to this day. All right. So of the She people, they're still there, but they don't want us to know that. So they hide them, and the only ones that they allow in are the ones that we see, or the lighter skinned ones. You know, and they believe that they are, you know, the bearers of civilization, when even according to their own Mayan scholars, because this was a Mayan anthropologist who told us this. All right, he said that the Olmecs, or the She people, were the mothers and fathers of Western civilization, and not just that, that they were Nubian Egyptians. All right, so he told us this as a Mayan, and he said, and I'm a Mayan, and I'm telling you that this is what happened. Now, only reason why they started having to tell the truth, because they said something happened 4 years prior to that. So look at 2012, 4 years prior to that was 2008, which was the election of Obama. So now they can tell the truth about it. So that was a good thing about Obama getting in office, that now the truth was able to come out, as far even coming from those who was once hiding it. Because in 2007, when we went to Mexico, my wife and I, and we asked the archaeologists about, well, what about the Olmecs? He said, well, they're the father of civilization. They're the mothers of Western civilization. We don't know too much about them. Next question. God damn, hold up. That's how that was. And here it is, 5 years later. Oh, they Nubian Egyptians. They look like you.
That's powerful, man. That's
right.
Really
right. So they know. So this is information that's been hidden. When my wife and I went to the Grand Lodge of England in London, the curator, this was a year later in 2008. The curator of the museum portion said, how do you feel about the possibilities of your first black president? And me and the two brothers that we came there with, I started smiling, and we started looking at my wife, and she already spilled the beans. She said it was more than 9 before him. He jumped back and said, who told you that? You're not supposed to know that. Did they tell you that?
Wow.
So we know that there's information in which that's hidden. And Negro's going to tell me, posing as Moors on a talk show, on a radio show just last week, that there's no conspiracy. Well, goddamn, how come I'm going to Mexico, I'm going to damn England, and everybody around the world know that there's a damn conspiracy for us not to know our heritage here?
I mean, why do you think they don't want us to know our heritage here? What's the biggest reason in your you know?
Because they had such a hard time with us warring against them. This was not an easy battle. They want us to believe that this was easy. The Yamasee, the Seminole, the Galageechee people fought them for 200 years. Fucking them up. For 200 years. We was going at them. So why would they want those descendants of the Olmecs, or the She people in the southern region of North America, to know that we put up a fight? And that we are the ones in which they're hiding this information from. But now the world is saying, hey, since Obama got in, we can tell. What the hell?
So Obama opened one of the seals, huh?
Right. Exactly.
All right. So you know, no Prophet Noble
Regardless if you like him or not, that's what happened. And
oh,
I bear witness to it because I seen it happen. I witnessed it and heard this happen. You know, I've seen these archaeologists and anthropologists and historians and tour guides and these curators of museums to bear witness to the fact that this information is about us. So we can't get away from that.
yeah. Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Are you a member? First of all, are you a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America, or?
I'm the Grand Sheikh of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science. Yes.
Oh, so you have your own temple, or you're not a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America?
We are the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, which is the civic side on which that was formed by Prophet Noble Drew Ali in 1926.
Gotcha.
Not the religious side, but the civic side. We deal with the science of law.
Science of law. Gotcha. All right. Noble Drew Ali, could you tell us a little bit about who he was and you know, who were some of his?
Prophet Noble Drew Ali was born in 1886 right here in North Carolina on the Cherokee Reservation, which is about 25 miles away from where I currently live, which is called Clinton, on the Chohari Reservation, which is a remnants of the Cherokee people in Sampson County, or what he referred to as Simpson Buck County. The fact that he was raised on the Cherokee Reservation shows that he was already trying to tell you something, that we was the so-called natives here. You know, the fact that he even revealed that part. Later on, as he got older after the death of his parents, he moved with his family and got adopted in Virginia, in Norfolk, Virginia, near Hampton. And he became a railway on the train, a porter. He also, in the early 1900s, became a Baptist minister and was getting ready to form a Christian version. Allegedly, he went to Egypt and he met individuals such as the same teacher of Marcus Garvey by the name of Deuce Muhammad Ali. All right. So not only did Deuce Muhammad Ali raise Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but also he, as we know, he helped raise Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So later on, we find that from that teaching, he also meets Solomon. And Solomon, I believe it's Solomon Muhammad, or Solomon Muhammad. And he meets Solomon Muhammad, if I'm not mistaken, that's his name. And he meets him in Egypt, and he actually asked Solomon Muhammad to come to America in order to help him teach and to help him put this temple together, which becomes the Canaanite temple in 1913. Solomon was already a high degree Mason. All right. As a matter of fact, he was part of the Medina Masonic, Shrine of Masonic. Actually, I guess you could say more so of the Memphis Rite, the Mezerum Memphis Rite. All right, something like that. And I think he had like the 96th degree. And you know, so this temple of Canaanite, this is why, or Canaanite temple, this is why we find that the Moorish Science Temple of America, or the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, or the Moorish Divine National Movement, Moorish National Divine Movement, we find that it was set up on Masonic principles because it came by way of them and their Masonic teachings coming from Solomon. So Noble Drew Ali left the Canaanite temple, which was in Newark, New Jersey, and he goes to Chicago by 1916, and he forms the Moabite Holy Temple of Science of the World. The Moabite Holy Temple Science of the World, which is the Moorish Holy Temple Science of the World. And he formed that on May 1st, 1916. Right? And from that comes by 1925 going to 1926, the Moorish Temple of Science, or the Moorish Science Temple, as it was also referred to as. It was also known as Allah's Temple of Islam. By 1928, they go and put together the Moorish Science Temple of America. All right, which everything that they did, which was the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, they did the chamber lessons under that, the 101s, actually before that, the 102s. They also did the adept chamber lessons, I should say, under 1925 to 1926, with the civic side, which was the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, or the Moorish Science Temple on that side. It wasn't until a year later, actually 2 years later, in 1928, that Prophet Noble Ali puts together the Moorish Science Temple. And he said that was a need for religious protection to change from the civic side, which was done through the Secretary of State, to now the county side, which would have protected through the Hurt statutes. The Hurt statutes gave religious protection, all right, in which that made it a 508, caused by, and this is where some of the temples are falling at today, because a lot of them are still have been filed under a 508. I mean, under 501c3 instead of a 508, in which that Prophet Noble Ali put together. All right. So a 508 do not have to stop being political in any shape, form, or fashion. They can still be political. Unlike a 501c3, it can't be political. If they try to be political in any shape, form, or fashion, their tax exemption can be stripped away from them.
For 501c3.
Right, for a 501c3. Their tax exemption can be stripped from them, and so forth and so on. For a 508, that's not too much to worry about. So, being that Prophet Noble Ali put together that by 1928, the Moorish Science Temple of America, it was, which was, more than 35 years before Lyndon B. Johnson got into presidency, in which that he formed the 501c3 in order to stop churches from being political and be politicalized. He did not want them to be political in any shape, form, or fashion, so that was a conspiracy once again. But any temple that comes forth will have to do it up under Prophet Noble Ali under that 508 status, based on the Hurt statutes. The Hurt statutes, some refer to as the Hurt divine statutes. It's just the Hurt statutes to me, but it does deal with that information. So Prophet Noble Ali knew what he was doing, because that offered protection under the amendments, in which that legislation can't be done by the House, which is the Senate, as well as also the representatives, in any shape, form, or fashion, which is Congress, can't be legislated against. Religion can't be legislated against. So that was a part of protection for us.
Okay. I have a question. And I hope nobody don't take this as a disrespectful question. It's really a question that I've pondered. Now, the term prophet, right? Is it synonymous with a degree in like knowledge?
Astronomy degree.
Yeah, exactly. So I was curious if it was just a degree, because when people hear the term prophet or grand sheik or master, these worshipful this and some of these titles they're just degrees that is the knowing that you have a certain amount of knowledge or you've gone through a certain initiation where it's the level that you're at right now. It's not a spooky thing. At least that's what I was thinking. It can't be a spooky thing, like
Right.
some voice spoke to him out of the heavens and now you can see the future. I mean, am I wrong in making that?
No. Prophet Abdul came to reveal the secrets in the secret societies, as compared to those who conceal the secrets in the secret societies. When you see Prophet Abdul, with his hand over his heart like this means that he comes to reveal the secrets. When you see a Mason with their hand inside like this, like you see Napoleon in them, they come to conceal the secrets. All right. So Prophet Abdul said that he come to, based on the oral statements and prophecies of Prophet Abdul, he come to reveal the secrets held by the secret societies. And basically that is already given away in the preamble of the Moorish Holy Quran Circle 7. If you read the beginning of that, it says that the secrets was in India, the secrets was in in Arabia and different other places, and those secrets are now to be revealed in this time. So he was here to reveal those secrets, and basically he revealed it through his adept chamber lessons to those who went to the temple.
Okay, so we had Moors in Africa, Moors in Europe, we had Moors in the Americas. Did we have Moors in Asia, in Australia, Antarctica, and all the other continents as well? Or what?
If you get the book African Early Presence in Asia by Abdul Basit, he breaks that down, that there was already African presence there. Matter of fact, they're the ones who built the pyramids at Xi'an, which is in the province of Xi'an, which is in China, which the Chinese people themselves say that they don't know who built it. But we do, and that was us, once again, because we're the ones who had the pyramid science at that particular time. So that same information and science we took around the world. So if you see pyramids or mounds, that was us, because we was doing the same thing. Just like on your physical body, you have pressure points and meridians, which would correlate to the world as ley lines and certain energy grids.
When you say that was us, do you mean that was melanated people, that the melanated people gave the people the technology to build those things, or was it melanated people that literally built it?
Yeah, the melanated people who literally built it.
Okay.
We built it.
Oh, that's about.
Like the word Xian actually is the word Shang, and Shang is short for Shango, which is Yoruba, from out of the Nigeria. You had the tribe of the Yoruba, and the Yoruba traveled from out of Africa into what is now called Asia, and they set up the first dynasty called the Shang dynasty. And the word Shang comes from the word Shango. Matter of fact, the word Chinese is a Yoruba word, which means protected.
Interesting. Because when we talk about the Moors, I mean, in my mind, I don't group them as one thing where I see, like everybody in Africa is a Moor. Even though that can be a general description, because as an adjective, if it's describing, us based on our phenotype and certain.
Word Moor simply means dark skin complected. So, yeah. Right.
But as a noun, like you said in ancient Egypt, the word meant guardian and custodian, and these that's separate now. So everybody wasn't a guardian, everybody wasn't a custodian. So who were the guardians? Were there people that went through a certain?
Oh my good gosh, everything ringing.
You lighting up, bro. You lighting up.
That'd be a good point for some money. All right, I'm ready.
Yeah, what I was saying though, what I was the gist of what I was trying to say is as far as who the Moors were in these different places, it,
Hmm.
it couldn't have just been everybody that had dark hue or whatever. Even though that's a description that would pretty much, you know, anybody that had melanated melanated complexion or whatever would fit the description. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they were Egyptians or Ethiopians or
Right,
Nubians or, you know, the people the Washita, because, you know, they still had like I don't know what you call it. Is that a tribal thing? Their tribal identity?
right. They still had the tribal identity.
Yeah, they
Hmm.
still had their tribal. So the Egyptians
Hmm.
had, you know, you know, everybody knew who they were, even
Right,
though
because even Prophet of Jali referred to El Bay as tribal names.
yes.
You know, so yeah, we still had our tribal name.
But so Moor was more like was that a tribal name as well for us, or was that just a national
That was a general name for all of us.
for all of us?
Right. You have to understand is that when I'm talking about those who built the pyramids and the mounds, these were highly advanced individuals or people of civilization.
Hmm.
They belong to ancient mystery school of Kemet or Ethiopia,
Hmm.
Kush, the ancient mystery school of Kush, basically.
Hmm.
And they spread it throughout the world, and they brought those teachings to those regions wherever they were, and to those people, So, this was about spreading knowledge at one time, unlike that it is nowadays.
So for you, Dr. Alim, and for many of the other people who consider themselves more, I consider myself a more. I consider myself a Hebrew. I consider myself a, you know, I don't
Right.
separate myself from the history and the culture that our people have created, because
Exactly.
these
I'm
are
all
all these things are things that we manifested, that we brought into reality. So it doesn't matter that, you know, a segment of us goes by another name. You know what I mean?
right.
It's
By ostracizing yourself from one, you actually exclude yourself from all.
all exactly.
Right.
But because there's so much confusion and so much debating that's constantly going on, especially on social media, where people get behind a keyboard and become super thugs, or you know,
Right. Right. They become self-proclaimed
yeah,
uh, grand sheiks and grand Alibaba. You know, they become the supreme historian.
exactly.
And
And
as brothers Sarah student said, he said it ain't even been from around the corner. They ain't going nowhere but from around the corner to from the bodega. You know what I'm saying? But
so
yet they know all this information and they done been everywhere. They ain't even going out the country. Don't even have a passport. But yet them been somewhere and got some information.
yeah, they got some information, but they don't, you know, and they think that the information they have is all the information there is. I mean, sometimes it's just a perception, and it's hard to argue with someone's perception. And it's funny because I remember once a queen was trying to explain that to me, and I didn't get it at the time. You know what I mean? You can't argue with somebody's perception, because the way you perceive something is the way you perceive it. You know?
Right. That's for you
Yeah,
to determine. Nobody can argue with your perception.
exactly. But I can't argue with your perception because it's your perception. All right, so here we are. We are great people. We go back millions of years, probably billions of years, even based on, like, you know, all the new information that keeps on unveiling and keeps on.
Right.
We all the people on this planet, you know, they're our children. That's how I look at them. They're our children. They're our offsprings.
Right.
We taught them pretty much, you know, the things they know and the things they're using to even hold us back or hold us down. So here we are. We're the grandparents. We're the great grandparents on the planet, and our children now, right? They want to have their empire and their time. So what's the difference? What's the difference between them? What we have and what they want to have, or what they're doing.
Well, the difference is that we don't want to suppress or oppress or depress anyone. We simply want our stand on this planet to be that of equality.
But did we not also enslave them though? Wasn't there a time when we enslaved?
Yes, yes, but even Prophet Noble Ali stated that once we come back in power, this time show love. So yes, that showed that we at one time did not show love. We was a cruel people, you know. And yes, we did enslave them. As a matter of fact, up until the 1800s, the majority of those who were enslaved was Europeans. They was Irish and Slavic, so Slavians, you know, people. You know, that's who we held in captivity.
Yeah, sometimes I think this is more like the whole thing is really just a spell that has us thinking that, you know, the way we do cruelty is better than the way other people do cruelty. To the point where when you think about, you know, even the ancient Egyptians who were great people, they did, you know, their civilization laid the foundation for pretty much the world civilization today, but they went to war with nations. And they didn't go into war with those nations with unks. You know what I mean? They didn't go in there and try to piece people down. They went in there with shields and swords and, you know, spears and
arrows. Right.
Yeah. So, and you know, kids got killed, women got killed, you know, innocent people, you know, all kinds of brutality came through different peoples. I'm not saying that to give Europeans a pass for their cruelty, or Arabs, or anyone.
Right. But see, this is the problem with the way that they have done their thing. The problem is that this becomes the first recorded historical event where your culture, your religion, your language was stripped from you. Your folkways, your mores, everything was stripped from you. And you just an empty vessel based on their oppression, based on their indoctrination, based on their training. You know, this is the first time that this has ever happened in recorded history, because even when we did tribal wars in Africa, that individual that might have been held captive could actually become the chief of the damn tribe. We didn't hold or stop that individual. They had that potential. They went before the witch doctor, you know what I'm saying? And if the witch doctor said, yo, this individual is great, you need to groom them, that's what our tribe did. You see?
Some would say, some people would argue that that's kind of similar to the some of the first, you know, we always go, oh, the first black person do this first. Obama becoming the first president is kind of like, you know, going from that polarity from slave to president.
Well, what happened was that they didn't realize what was going to take place, and they wasn't too sure about the Olmec Mayan calendar being set up, and that it ended December 21st, 2012. Let me hold on. All right. So they didn't realize. Where was I at?
They're saying about the Olmecs.
Right. The European didn't realize or know for sure what was going to happen in December the 21st, 2012. So to make sure that nothing was going to happen bad, they had to put a brother in position. Right?
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
You're saying that basically, like they tailor-made everything from 2008 to this time, just to make sure, just in case came back out of the clouds,
right,
and wanted back their world, the head of it would be a black man and a black woman. That's powerful. I never made that connection. That's deep.
Yeah, that's why they did that. They had to make sure that it was a melanated man and woman in position as 2012 came, because that was already recorded. Prophet Noble Ali in his oral statements and prophecies stated that you will have a Asiatic president, in other words, the Moorish Asiatic Moorish president, and you will have a European vice president. Now, this was recorded back allegedly in 1928. So he said if the European is truthful, and if they focus is on the real plan, then that's what will take place, and that the Moors will come into their own by 2000. Now, he states this, that the Moors will come into their own by 2000. So here it is, by 2000, 8 years later, this prophecy again takes place with Prophet Noble Ali, stating that, you know, you will have an Asiatic president and a European vice president. That becomes Barack Obama. It becomes Joe Biden.
Question. I've seen in some of the literature that sometimes get passed around as you know, history. That there were several several other presidents. They were not necessarily melanated, but presidents who
There's melanated.
were black or from African ancestry or mixed ancestry.
Right.
What is your take on that?
It's true.
How many presidents were there, and who were they specifically?
It's about, let me see, it was 8 during the Articles of Confederation.
Who were they?
Well, actually, it was 8 during the Articles of Association, and during the Article of Confederation to the Constitution, it was 8 more, if I'm not mistaken. So this is where they say that the 9th president of the United States actually is George Washington, who they refer to as the first president of the United States. But there was 8 before him, and then 8 more before. So we're talking about from 1774. You had the first president. You had several of them. You had John Hancock. You had John Hanson. You had Elijah Boutenote. You had
John Hanson.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name. I remember hearing something about him.
Yeah, John Hanson was the first president under the Articles of Confederation, 1781.
Or was he a white man?
He was a brother. He was melanated.
Okay.
He was a Moor.
Matter
of fact, he's on the back of the $2 bill.
Have you seen the photo credits on that bill to see if that's actually him?
I'm not talking about that particular photograph. The photograph, there's also a painting of him as a mulatto.
Oh. Okay.
Which that they have of him. There's also another painting. Matter of fact, you look on the back of the $2 bill, they have 2 brothers sitting on the back of the $2 bill. And how you know? Because their faces are etched in darker than everyone else that's on the $2 bill. The one that is sitting to the left is John Hanson. The one sitting to the right is Chief Justice Benjamin Banneker of M Bay and Emmanuel Ali.
Where can we source some of this information to kind of verify it for
Actually, you can get it from my book. I have all of it in my book, The First World Order.
Go ahead.
I have all of the presidents prior to George Washington, prior to him, in my book.
Do you have a copy of the book you could flash, or just tell us where they could get it?
Yeah, you can actually get it from, let me see if I got it on here, but you can get the book from my website, dralimbeybey.com, First World Order. So, you know, you can definitely get it from there. And let me see. It's been a minute since I did that lecture. Also, I have a lecture that I did. It's on my YouTube page, where I break down all of the presidents prior to George Washington and how long they served, what their names were, the years, and everything. You know, so I think people definitely need to see that. I mean, history has been whitewashed. So some of the pictures in which that you can see is that of Europeans. But if you go to Thomas Jefferson, you'll find that Thomas Jefferson was Europeanized, because if you get The 5 Negro Presidents by J. Rogers, he showed that Thomas Jefferson was a mulatto, was a Moor. He also in the book by our sister Arset, in her book, The 6 Black Presidents, she shows that Thomas Jefferson was also a Moor. So this Europeanized picture of him with this long flowing hair going to the back and with these European features is not really Thomas Jefferson. That is the Europeanized version. Just as we found out that Abraham Lincoln, when you go to the Library of Congress, they used to call him Africanus, Abraham Africanus. And Africanus because he was a so-called black. Douglas was doing a debate against him, all right? And referred to his dark features, referred to him as being a Moor, basically. And even Abraham Lincoln refers to himself as having dark, swarthy skin. So, I mean, all these things keep showing over and over again. So these interpretations and these renditions and reconstructed history that the European is showing us is incorrect. And like I said, when we went to the library, when we went to the Grand Lodge of England, the United Grand Lodge of England, the curator asked us about the possibilities of the first black president, and my wife turned around and said there was at least 9 before him. And like I said, he jumped back and was like, "Who told you that? You're not supposed to know that. Did they tell you that? Who is the they?" He talking about his European Masonic brothers here. Did they spill the beans? Did they let that information out? Because they're not supposed to have let that information out. Well, the cat is out the bag now. We already know who they were, their names and everything. So people can go to my book, The First World Order, as well as also to the videotape that I put on my website. It's called Barack Obama Was Not the First Black President. All right? President Barack Obama, not the first black president. All right, so y'all can go to my go to my YouTube page and see that.
Okay. Before we wrap it up, and so I want you to state your website again, just so people can go to it, and also your YouTube, which I'll put in the descriptions for those who are watching or those who will view this later on.
Okay. Right, it's Dr. Alim L. Bey, DrAlimElbey, dralimlbey.com. Well, based on Black's Law Dictionary, free white person is a naturalization term based on the Naturalization Act of the 1798, if I'm not mistaken. But what it states is that basically everyone of mixed heritage, except for the European and the Aryans and the Syrian, as well as the Syrian Asiatics, are what is known as, can be known as free white person. Then you have white people or white person in the Black's Law Dictionary, which does include Caucasians in the scenario. However, free white person does not include Caucasians, nor Aryans, nor Syro Asiatics. So they do not refer to them as such. So they cannot be classified as free white person. However, those out of Spain and Portugal that of Moorish heritage can be. All right. So it also says that Europeans of, which are Caucasians, are known as white person or white people. So that correlates to that. All right. Black's Law Dictionary. Like I said, black is talking about, according to the science, it means death, but it's talking about civilis mortuus, which means dead in the eyes of the Lord. So that's really what it's talking about. Can you see my screen?
I'm seeing your screen actually. I was going to tell you, you could unshare it now, because yeah, I saw the cartoon. When was that cartoon done? What year? Do you know the specific year it was done?
Yeah, it's from the Library of Congress, LC control number 12007713. Type of material: book, print, microform, electronic, etc. Personal name: Africanus, Abraham Africanus 1 from the old calendar law. Main title: His Secret Life. So that's his secret life. All right. Let me show you also. Let's see if I can find it. If I have it in this one. I can show you the presidents. Hopefully I got it in here. Right here. The 5 Negro Presidents by J. Rogers, and the 6 Black Presidents by Black Blood, White Mass by Offset Lakufu. In the Gravane collections, there are over 200 letters to the Bey of Morocco from the Continental Congress. Let me see if they, okay, this is just one of the letters. Let me see if I got the actual things in here. And I have it in this one, but I have it though. because you have four constitutions. You have the Articles of Association, 1774. You have the Articles of Confederation, 1781. You have the Declaration of Independence, 1776, and you have the Constitution for the United States of America, 1789. All right, so this is what I was talking about. There's two governments in the so-called North America region, Mexum, Atlantis, or Atslan, and you have one which was the Moorish federal government or the Continental Congress, and the other was the European state or corporation pseudo government, which is now known as the so-called federal government. But there were 8 Continental Congress presidents, all right, and the presidents were Moorish, presidents of the Moorish federal government, as previously mentioned. The imposter George Washington, who was Adolf Weitzer of the age of 9, stated that he chopped down the cherry tree or cut down the cherry tree. Metaphysically, that was the story, a symbolic reference about George Washington, who was Adolf Weitzer, actually being the 9th president of the United States, 1789, and not the first president, which would have been 1781, based on the Articles of Confederation. Right here, this individual is said to have been, it said, this is the picture that you was talking about. This is the individual who is said to have been John Hanson, but we know that this is actually the Liberia congressman. He was an ambassador actually to Liberia.
He named himself after John Hanson, somebody.
Right. But I'm gonna show you. I hope I have it in this book, but I show you the actual pictures of John Hanson, even the paintings. But here you have the president of the Continental Congress. You have Peyton Randolph, September the 5th, 1774. He was the great-grandfather of Pastel Beverly Randolph, who is known as the late Supreme Grand Master of all the Rosicrucians in the world. He was a Mason. You had 2, Henry Millerton, October the 22nd, 1774. Then Peyton Randolph becomes president again, May 10th, 1775. Then you have John Hancock, as I was talking about. He was the first to sign the Declaration of the Rights of Independence. Declaration of Independence. He was also a Mason, and he was the president of the Continental Congress from May 24th, 1775. You have Henry Lawrence, November the 1st, 1774, a Mason. John Jay, December the 10th, 1778. Samuel Huntington, September the 28th, 1779. Thomas McCain, July 10th, 1781. After which 8 other Moors followed this president. 10 of the signers of the Articles and 9 signers of the Declaration and 13 signers of the Constitution. And only this number were or would become Freemasons. So even so, this is an excellent percentage of the participants. All right, it goes on. You have here the Masonic memberships. This is if you want to study any further. This is the Masonic membership of the Founding Fathers Masonic Service Association. This is actually a book. And here it is, Presidents on the Articles of Confederation. John Hanson is number 1, November the 5th, 1782 to November 1783. Elias Bolton, though, November the 4th, 1782. Excuse me, it's supposed to be 83 to November 80. Actually, it's supposed to be November the 5th, 1781, excuse me, to November the 1782 for John Hanson. Then Elias Bolton, though, from November the 4th, 1782 to November the 83. Thomas Mifflin from November the 3rd, 1783 to November 1784. He was one of the signers of the Constitution. Richard Henry Lee, November 30th, 1784 to November 1785. John Hancock. So you see, John Hancock was the president under the Articles of Confederation and the Articles of Association. John Hancock, as well as also the signer, the first one to put his John Hancock on the Declaration of Independence. November the 23rd to 1785, June 1786. Nathaniel Gohem, June 6, 1786, February 1782. He was also a signer of the Constitution. Arthur S. Clare, February the 2nd, 1787, January 1788, he was a Mason. Cypress Griffiths, January the 22nd, 1788 through 1789. Of course, then, interestingly, there was no states because the first state was Delaware, which was ratified on December the 7th, 1787. All right, so this is when the first state comes into play. All right, so that is the information that I have on that. This is what I was talking about on the back of the $2 bill, right here. You can see them clearly. And you can also find this information, More Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson.
So you're saying those two guys that we're looking at in
Yes.
black and white painting or sketch, these were black people because why?
Yeah. Just look at their faces. Their
Oh,
faces is
okay.
etched.
It's a darker, it's more darkening.
Right, right. And this is on the back of the $2 bill. All thing we did was blow it up. This on the back of the $2 bill. You can look at it yourself. And they happen to be darker. So this man that is here to the left is John Hanson, the first president of the Continental Congress. The man on who soon become the first president of the Continental Congress, he's the one who actually provoked the Europeans into signing, the Declaration of Independence. All right, and here you have Ben Bay Emmanuel Moore Ali, known as Benjamin Banneker, who was to the right. Okay.
Next, your question, Dr. Alim. These people on the back of the bills, do they have photo credits for them in the Library of Congress that you could pull in and look up?
No, as a matter of fact, that's what I was getting ready to show you right here. This is the John Turnbull painting, and as you see, they're nowhere to be found on this painting. So no, this is something in which that they've been trying to hide. The United States, this is the United States Capitol Rotunda painting, and the brown-skinned men or man does not appear. So in the John Turnbull, you do not see them at all on here. But
So,
yet it's on the back of the $2 bill.
So other than these paintings right here, the names that you mentioned for the 7 or the 8 or the people,
that was the signers of the council, right? That was the signers.
We verify that these people are indeed like melanated people, people of our hue and climb or
only because that we had our own presidency of the Iroquois Confederation at that time, and we the ones who helped them write the Constitution, in which that Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams all agree, according to their information, states that we helped them do so. So prior to them even coming into, because remember, they sought protection from us to help them because they was running from England, King George III, who was also a Moor. All right, and he married King George III, married Sophia. All right, Sophia Stewart. And who was Sophia Stewart? Oh, Sophia Charlotte. All right, that was her name, Sophia Charlotte, or Charlotte.
Queen Charlotte.
As in Queen Charlotte, right? And it is her in which that Charlotte, North Carolina, is named after here. But she was also melanated, a Moor. So you had a Moorish couple during that time who was prosecuting their slaves, who was the Europeans, English and Irish at that time. And from out of their prison system, they released them onto our shores. And we still dealing with the same barbaric, psychopathic attitudes from that ancestry that was released then by them brutish Moors, in which that relinquished that upon us here on our territory, as we have been dealing with these individuals now for the last 400 years.
Okay, so basically you're saying that we were keeping our own records of like all of our activities with these people, and so some of this stuff can be verified through.
It can be verified through certain books, in particular, The Rise of the Moors, written by Taj Tariq Bey. That book in particular is real good. My book, First World Order, written by me, is excellent to get. Oh man, there's so many books, and I already made a lot of mention of the other books. Barbary Powers. You get the book Barbary Powers by David McReachy speaks about this, how the Europeans had to pay us tribute because the Moors controlled the seas. So anytime that they had to sell somewhere, they had to pay us tribute.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is also how we know that they couldn't have bought millions of us here, because they had to pay us tribute. You know, all the way up until the early 1900s. Matter of fact, the Ottoman Empire didn't end until 1914, World War I. And as a matter of fact, that's why they started World War I, was to end the rule of the Ottoman Empire, so they can come in with more reconstructed history. Because we know that originally America was never founded on a Christian religion; it was founded on Islam. This is why Thomas Jefferson had a Quran, and why recently that one of the senators just got during the time when Barack Obama was in office as president, got sent into the Senate with his hand on the Holy Quran. He affirmed on the Holy Quran instead of the Bible.
So the power of history, man. There's so much that we don't
know.
Yeah, we have no information on a lot of, and some of it we do have information on. Now,
Right.
as far as the books go, like a lot of times when I hear people talk about books, I am not always, I don't always jump out of my skin, because a book is just a collection of your your own point of view, unless it's backed up by sound
Right.
research.
Well, that's why I was giving books. I wasn't talking about channeled information.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting to. I'm getting to that. Are these some of these books, are they just based on conjecture, or are they well sourced?
Oh yeah.
Are you endorsing them fully with confidence?
Oh yeah. Bobby, any book by David McReachy will get you to the truth, get you closer to the truth than any book in which that you will read on history today.
Mm-hmm.
You can also get Ruins of Empires by Count Boney, Boney, Bolney, Count Boney.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ruin of Empires, and like I said, Destruction of Black Civilizations by Chancellor Williams had to be in everybody's collection. These are books in which that goes in on our history,
Okay,
and what took place.
Powerful. Brother, I mean, like, I know we could talk for probably another 10 hours, and we still wouldn't get to all of the information.
That's true.
We got more things to do, and hopefully more time to do some talking on some of this subject matter, because I believe that brothers like yourself, brothers like Asir, the Duke of Tears, and all the other good brothers and sisters out there who put the effort to get information back out to the people. You guys are doing a stellar job, and I know it's sometimes not not something that comes with any immediate rewards or gratification, because some of our people are so stiff-necked and stubborn, and even disrespectful.
I mean, look at the Empress. She died in the nursing home. Look at Dr. Ben. He died in the nursing home. So this is the way that our people take care of their people who's doing this and who's putting their life on the line. So you can't expect too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, just keep your head up, man. Stay strong, and the ancestors definitely with you. Anything I can do to support your efforts, please, you have my number. You can always reach out. We do want to try to bring some of this information to the islands, and I'm be working with some of my colleagues down in the Caribbean to make that a reality. Hopefully, sometime very, very soon, because we wanna try to basically open up the floodgates to our people, and let us let them know who they are, and and that our history doesn't begin or end with slavery.
Right. Exactly.
The people that were enslaved, a lot of them, as far as I've come, even when they explain it, they said these people at war, and they were prisoners of war. So here you have prisoners of war, but you're calling your prisoners of war slave, or they're calling their prisoners of war slave. Right. We don't call the Vietnamese prisoners of war slaves. We don't call the Korean prisoners of war slaves, but we call African prisoners of war slaves.
Exactly.
And we use that's used as a way to psychologically program us to start. yeah, to start from a very weak place, you know, where you see yourself in a servile state, you see yourself as not contributing to civilization.
Right.
And
And speaking of that, get the book Now Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony T. Brown.
oh yeah, that's a great book. That's a great book. That I would recommend that to people who, you know, probably just starting out. That's a great book. Anthony Brown. I think I might have that in here, but I don't see it.
Sex and Race by J. Rogers. What They Never Told You in History Class. Missing Pages of History by Indokimit Kush. Get those 2 books. Those 3 books actually. J. Rogers. Sex and Race Volume 1, 2, and 3. Get those books, you know, because this is information that is hard to find nowadays. You know? So start getting this information and put this in your library, because this is heirlooms that you can actually pass on to your children. You can read these stories and this truth, these facts to your children as they're growing up, to instill within them this great heritage and history, that we're global people, that we just didn't come here bought by no goddamn Europeans on slave ships 400 years ago.
Indeed, indeed. One last thing before you go, Dr. Alim. I wanted to get to this, but it seems like we've come to it at the very end of this talk. Can you just, in the most succinct way that you can, detail what is Moorish science?
All right. The word Moorish, as we broke down, ties back to land or is related to nationality. All right. Science means to know. So basically, know thyself. That's what this means. Moorish science means to know thyself. So that's the first caption that you will find on the Moorish Holy Quran, Surah 7. As you open the book up, the first thing you will see is know thyself. As this was told to us and shown to us, and for those who have witnessed and gone to Egypt, you will see it on the temple walls and on the temple outer structures as you enter into the temples. Know thyself, which is basically in the image of what is called the Yashet, which is Washita, Washashet, which is the sun with the wings, which looks like the upper portion of the caduceus symbol, which is on the hospitals around the world, which was a symbol in which that was brought forth during the 3rd dynastic period by M9NDtv, who was the first, he was the father of medicine, you know. Hippocrates, who is known as the father of medicine to the Greeks, actually was based that character was based on M9NDtv, who actually was the father of medicine.
Okay.
You know, that's where you get the Hippocratic oath from.
So Moorish science is what exactly? What is it to practice Moorish science? Is it studying history? Is it knowing how to build? Is it knowing how to fight? Is it knowing how to
all of it.
Law? Like
all of it.
Yeah, all of it.
There's 9 battlefronts that Dr. Frances Quest Rosen, her teacher, Dr. Nellie Fuller, speaks of. There's 9 battlefronts. You got religion, sex, law, labor, economics, history, edutainment, entertainment, education, land issues. You know, so we talking about, you know, health. You know, we talking about 9 to 11 different issues, you know, in which that we have to develop a battlefront against. So Moorish science is to help you know thyself in all those areas to the highest levels.
And with that, I want to say thank you, my brother. Thank you so much for all the jewels and all the gems that you dropped today. I know I definitely learned a couple of things, and I'm gonna, you know, it's gonna make me study even more now. And I hope those who are watching live or those who will view it later also benefited from this. Please, again, you know, let us know how we can reach you on social media, what kind of products you have, and where we can get them.
All right. Once again, www.dralimbey.com, DRALIMELBEY.com. We have our ancestral herbs, our ancestral teas. I am a certified trained herbalist, trained at the Emmanuel Bible College, become a master herbalist. Also was a student of Dr. Paul Gauss, who is one of the foremost top herbalists in the world with New Body products. So ours is called the Healing Wings Institute. Products, also ancestral herbs. So please support us. We need as much help as possible. And we do this 24/7. This is my life, is getting information out to the people. I'm not sitting up in a corporation, making six figures. You know, I'm here studying, researching, getting this information out, writing books, so that we can have a better understanding to know thyself to the highest level.
All right, and with that, I want to say thank you again, Dr. Alim Bey. This is TEHUT-NINE. This is M9NDtv, both thoughts and inspired thinking. We were at Dr. Alim Bey, Moorish scientist, basically give us a little bit of some of the history and some of the things that have been left out of the history books by the people who put them together. But we will have him back on the show, have him back on the platform to basically go into more stuff, more in depth as well. We've talked now for about 2+ hours, so I know that what I mean. You must have got something out of it. I certainly did, and I'm grateful, my brother. Thank you so much again. And with that, I just want to say peace out and thank you.
All right, peace.